Defense Department leadership saw the results. As a result, now I'm building this for the Defense Department, and we're going to be testing this in a major war game that's going to take place in October called Unified Engagement. Now, this game was strategic. The game that's coming up in October is operational. It means I need an answer immediately. But unless I know what capabilities can come to the fight so I can build my playbook in advance, I'm not sure where to throw the pass. That's the challenge that the military has today. They'll show up at a game and they'll have a handful of tools, but they haven't leveraged the intellectual capital that's out there. And to me, that's concerning. So when you look at the collaboration piece in and of itself, these are all the various steps that you have to go through in today's environment, okay? The military operator says, I got a problem, I need something. And we got to go through requirements developers, programmers, et cetera, et cetera. And that process takes a year and a half. But you're talking about, technology that, as I mentioned, depreciates like a head of lettuce. So how do we do all these various steps quickly? That's the thought process that I'm applying today. Now, as I mentioned, from an approach perspective, I've got to have awareness to what you all do in advance. I need help there. What we do is we host a workshop. We open up to the public. You come in. We have breakout sessions. And before you leave that workshop, I have at least knowledge of 3 core competencies that you or your specialty area brings to the fight. Okay, that's how I build the playbook. Now when I show up at the war game a month later, when I see something that looks kind of funny and I know that you're the solution, I throw the pass in your direction. Okay? Sanitizing the war game, the next big challenge that we have. Right now the government is very open towards getting away from traditional clearance management. Okay, and it's not perfect yet, but this is an opportunity for us to now reach out to you and allow you to respond to our challenges by sanitizing a classified issue. The trust issue. In order for us to maintain trust, we, even in government, have to always be talking to each other. Okay? Having an industry cell made up of folks like yourself at a war game is nothing novel. The problem is, the guys, the leaders that wear the stars on their shoulders that push the button, if they don't know anything about you, and you may be sitting 10 feet away from them, they're not going to rely on you because they don't know you. They don't have the confidence in what you bring to the fight. So we've got to ensure that we're always communicating. They have to have awareness to what you're all about. Using a neutral clearinghouse is a new way of thinking because that entity becomes the broker, it becomes a repository, and if it's neutral, it doesn't have a stake in the game. It's not Northrop Grumman, all due respect to them, running that entity. It's some neutral entity like a 501c(x) that allows us to do everything that we're proposing here. The anonymizer ensures that from an intellectual property protection, I'm protecting your creative ideas. At the same point, you're helping out the operator. But here's a really critical issue, the right mix. When I show up at a war game, I got to make sure I have my Jack Bauer team. Okay, they got to be the top of the game. They have to know their business. They have to know where to look. They have to be able to assist us with the game. And it's not just all Air Force or all military. It's a mix of individuals that are in this room that make this palatable. At the end, we go back and we look at the lessons learned and we throw the questions and the challenges back out to you saying, how could we have done this better? All right? That's what this is all about. That's the collaboration that we're looking for. And again, this is not for free, because I know for many of you, yes, you have a lot of patriots out there, but we're here to incentivize your attention. Okay? How do we do it? Well, I need some creative ideas there. But putting a pot full of money out there and having it sit there and knowing that we can spend it quickly, well, that makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of models that work from that. But we've got to take a look at that carefully. And then we've got to continually rehearse a lot of these war games, these tabletops, so that we're proficient. These are the types of companies that I brought to the fight. Okay, so when I talk about Black Hat, I went to Jeff Moss. I said, Jeff, I know you have a lot of talent in your back pocket. When I see a challenge related to some type of malware that I have no clue what it is, I'm going to share with you, I don't need to know who you talk to. Help me get an answer. Okay? There's one little company up there called PGMP, pretty good malware protection. It's like 3 people out of Austin, Texas. All right? This is the type of talent that I see out here today. These are the groups, again, one on many. I go to a trade association. I don't need to look at every company. I go to the leader of that association and I say, how many companies in Tech America know anything about cyber? How many understand CNA, C&D, C&E? How many of them are small, innovative companies? Okay. They should have that answer. If they don't, basically, that's part of my concerning issue. So in conclusion, and I'll be delighted to take any questions you may have, more than 85% of the critical infrastructure is managed by you all. So when the government comes in and tries to modify the acquisition cycle and says we need to do it ourselves without talking to the private sector, there's something wrong with that discussion. Okay, we need to really think about how do we leverage the talent from the private sector, which includes big business, small business, academia, patriots, hackers, venture capital. We've got to be able to think beyond the DIB. All due respect to the defense industrial base, a lot of the innovators move a heck of a lot quicker than those big companies. Trust, huge issue. How do I go beyond that? I got to have awareness. I got to be able to know who you are. I got to work with you. I got to understand what you're up against. Having capability awareness is a real issue. I will tell you that I've met with hundreds of really cool companies that come to my office and they sell a certain bell or a certain whistle. But the concern that I share with the Defense Department is this: I don't know what capacity you're at. So if I get hit in a major malware, something really happens, and I tap you on the shoulder and say you're in the game, and then you tell me, well, Riley, I'm only about 20% there, I got a problem. I got the clock ticking, all right? I got the 4-star up there wondering how we're going to fix it, and I got to figure out how I'm going to integrate a challenge while the hacker is doing what the hacker does well. So I've got to have the awareness of what's out there today. I believe that the neutral, having some type of neutral clearinghouse, something independent, has real promise. I've written about this online. There's thoughts out there, but I'm wide open to suggestions on what ought to be included inside of that entity. It's not just one entity. It could be hundreds of neutral entities, all talking to each other and managing all the knowledge nodes of companies and capability that are out there. Okay? The key here is speed of need, not speed of thought. And this is not about me. This is about we. All right? And we're trying to leverage that. The sanitization process was not easy for me to get the blessing from our leadership, but they knew full well that because the preponderance of expertise is out there, I needed the ability to go out there. So they provided me with sanitizers, specialists in security. Now, how difficult was that? I just asked the question. Okay, it works. These are the types of new thoughts that we're trying to get. And finally, let's stop trying to boil the ocean. Okay? This is hard work. But if we break it down into the elements, and if you're a specialist in one area versus another, well, those are the various teams that we need to do. All due respect to the White House reports that came out that said we need to have a czar, and I got that. We've been there, right? That's up here. Now we need to build something, take action. And that's what this is all about. Okay, so I can tell you the last 17 months has been a tremendous opportunity, but the key here has been I don't do a day without talking to my private sector partners, and I meet more of them day by day, and that's really the incentive that drives me to that parking lot at the Pentagon and has me work long days to try to figure this thing out. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be delighted to take any questions you have. I still have about 15 minutes, but thank you all very much. Thank you. Question? I think they want you to use the microphone. Yes, sir.
Do you think there's overlap in your mission with what you're trying to do with the CIC, with US CERT or CERT-CC or the MSI-SAC, and what they're trying to do in bringing some of this public-private partnership together?
Right. I mean, the issue of overlap is always a concern because, today there are a lot of investments in the various organizations that gentleman mentioned. I reach out to all these organizations. All right. I started out Air Force only. I knew that in order for me to be effective, I had to go to DHS. I've been to DC3. Steve Shirley knows me well. Same presentation, hasn't changed. Okay. What they like is a framework that now works. Why? Because each one of the organizations that you've mentioned is a knowledge node in and of itself. So think of it almost as a charm bracelet. I'm trying to build the mechanism that is the bracelet itself, where each one of the charms from DC3 to the ISACs, et cetera, hook onto that. Okay? We're not competing. We're enabling. All right? So, but we got to have the mechanism that allows the preponderance of information to flow. So, yes, I do collaborate with them all the time. I'm wide open. Again, this is not about me. And the cost is in not talking to those organizations. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you what you meant by capability. You spent several sentences on capability in terms of knowing it in advance and treating it as if it was something that could be quantified.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that your definition?
It is.
Okay.
When I use the term capability, I'm talking not just about a tool. I'm talking about a person, a solution, a process, something that will enable the fight. And we're talking about integrated capabilities. So sometimes I use the term to represent all of the above. But when I'm referring to capability, I'm referring to that type of cyber knowledge, et cetera, that's out there that I can leverage.
Yeah, I guess something that I can tell you from my experience doing different open source projects and just working in sort of this community is that capability is extraordinarily dynamic, and yep. I think that there's you're going to run into some problems with the different definitions of the word. Capability isn't really something you can determine in advance with any
right.
Hard 100% gotta know it, and the mindset is that the capability emerges from the situations we're put in. That also has to do with your question about incentivizing. Right. Money's okay, money's great, it buys stuff and we get paid with it sometimes.
Right.
But incentivizing, at least for me, I'll work on a problem for free if it's interesting.
Right.
You're going to have to express them in a way that really engages the imagination.
Right.
That's going to be up to you to be able to express those things.
And these are, from the capability issue, terminology is huge here. I, for one, understand that. And I'm all, open. People come in and say, don't say tomato, it's potato. Got that. I'm wide open for that. As far as incentivization, I will tell you that the government is trying to understand, especially in OSD. OSD is moving pretty quickly. They're very interested in figuring out how to do it. But we're not quite sure on what will incentivize you. Because I've met with folks saying, Riley, I just want to be part of the game. I love this stuff, man. This is great. I got that. All right? I'd love to be able to categorize those folks saying, these are in it for, because they enjoy it, because they're patriots. These over here are bottom line, they want cash. Okay? What type of cash? Again, did you hear me mention one single word about, in essence, programmatics and how we acquire? Because we don't know how to do that yet. Okay? And the reason is to turn to, if you've ever worked with the government, we have what's called the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. It's called Nightmare. All right? And that's the incentive of why most people are not incentivized to even work with the government. So if we had this clearinghouse that could very quickly allow us to, purchase that solution, that service, that tool, whatever. But what the government in many ways are considering today is they mean well, but they'll turn to their typical government group. If you're in the Air Force, a handful of majors and lieutenant colonels, and say, I need for you to think differently. Okay, these are folks that never spend a single day in the private sector. I need for you to change a 40-year-old acquisition cycle. Okay, do it quickly and make sure you incentivize those that are out there. And let me tell you, you don't even want to read that stuff. So having your input, in essence, understanding what will incentivize your participation. Yes, what you also want to know that when you do participate, that you get some type of attention for it, whether it's monetary or just that representation. I get that. Okay.